as the Bengals say, just another manic Monday. You know that song was originally written for Prince?
I believe it. I didn't know that, but I believe it.
I feel like it would have been a very different song. It still would have been it still would have been a jam, but just a very different jam.
Right. It would have been like, top of his category, but like not at all what it is.
More funk, less poppy.
Oh man, that would be a good funk song.
Elden Ring is topical, and I've been playing that. So,
yes, I've heard that Rondo has joined Elden Ring. There was a meme on the COTC Reddit today with a picture of the new character for the Elden. Oh, why am I talking about this without saying hello? Welcome to podcast number 406 of We Were Gamers, wherein I enlighten JJ about Elden Ring.
Oh, I love to learn about Elden Ring.
Hello, JJ.
Hello, Andy.
Michael, you're here.
How the turntables.
Yes. I like turntables. So did Prince, since we tied that in.
There we go.
There was a picture on the COTC Reddit today of the Elden Ring, the new Elden Ring mystery character, dressed all in white. And everyone said they were speculating, and they said, well, if they came to this Reddit, they'd already know it's Rondo.
Yeah.
Heard it here first.
Yeah.
That's good.
I don't know that we have a lot of COTC discussion specifically today, but JJ, how's Elden Ring going? Since we're already on the topic.
I guess COTC just announced Surtet is coming this week or next week.
Yes.
This week. I don't know who that is.
I don't know who that is. The big announcement was their JP announcement, getting a Final Fantasy tie-in.
Yeah, they pulled a bait and switch on everybody.
Sure did. I called it.
Andy was predicting it, and we were like, no, it couldn't be. And Andy's like, well, but
it's about time for a Final Fantasy tie-in.
Shocking it took them this long, to be honest.
I think Michael's opinion was he was glad for it.
Yeah, and I'm still glad that they picked the Final Fantasy that they did to tie in.
I'm surprised it wasn't 6, to be honest.
You would think 6 is more popular in the West for sure. I'm not clear about the status of the rankings of the Final Fantasies of that era in Japan.
Yeah. Well, also surprising that they decided to use that opportunity to make EX Sazantos and EX other characters instead of naming them for the characters from Final Fantasy IV.
I saw a lot of speculation that was an economically driven choice by you already have these voice actors on contract as opposed to having to go out and hire the Final Fantasy IV voice actors.
That was going to be
Final Fantasy IV voice actors?
So there's a game maybe you've never heard of, Andy, because no one played it, called Final Fantasy IV: The After Years.
Oh, I was going to say, because that's a SNES game that shouldn't have any voice acting.
Correct. But there was a straight up sequel in that, and I think it was on like the DS or the 3DS or something, and there was some voice there.
Oh, they got voice actors there.
And also they've been in like Disida Duocidem X32 Kai over 15 days, whatever, one of those kind of Noctis 02 kind of games with, Tetsuya Nomura, and anyway, they've all been in that and then had voice lines through all that stuff too.
My disappointment only runs from not getting a Cid in crossover land.
Yeah, I mean, if it was me and you were asking me, I would have assumed they would be picking Final Fantasy VII, since that's the one they just released a huge AAA game about that they want to sell more copies of, right?
Oh, yeah. You're right. I mean, I guess since I was thinking, well, they picked a Pixel Classic, so I would have gone with 6.
Yeah, so then that's the other thing. If you're going to pick a Pixel one, right, what's the most popular one? And I'm with you. I assume that it's 6, but
it is in the States, but I don't know that it's the same, to your point, JJ, the same ranking in Japan.
Yeah, and I know 4 is well liked, but it's a weird one because it's the one that never came out over here originally, right?
No, it was FF2 over here, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. So if we got every other one, we got 4 and we got 6 as 2 and 3 over here.
Okay, so we got 1, we got
1,
4,
4,
and then we got
and
6.
6.
Yeah.
Got you. I never remember which is the one that counted as 2. If it was actually 3 or if it was 4.
Right. Because we are still talking about it 28 years later.
Yeah, shoot.
Yeah. Oh boy. Well, Elden Ring though.
Elden Ring though.
Yeah, Elden Ring though. Are you going to burn yourself out before that DLC hits, JJ?
Nah, dude. Nah. And here's how I know that that's not going to be. Because I'm cruising, dude. This game is easy. I remembered just now.
Liar.
Bro,
I saw a very funny post on
I'm
the internet.
cruising though.
Normalize being bad at Elden Ring. It's okay.
Look, everyone sucks at Elden Ring the first time you play it. But the second time you play it, you know where all the BS is. And you're like, oh, wait, I remember this guy sucks. I'm going to go over here and like do some other stuff first and then come back and then whoop his butt. And then I did.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, oh, you know what? I remember this boss was really hard. I'm going to use my summon on this one. Oh, I remember I had a lot of trouble with this. Let's go find a better weapon and upgrade it a bunch before I come in here. And then it's like, oh, yeah, this is not so bad.
Right.
The stuff that honestly kills me more often than the bosses at this point has been like going through the dungeons, because the dungeons and like the areas you go through are just as BS as before, but you like don't remember the one time the guy jumps out of the thing on the wall and shoves you off the cliff. Like you didn't remember that because it just happened, you know, and then you're just like, I got by this again.
They love the gots. Even in the non Souls made games, like in the Star Wars ones. You got God on Dathomir. That guy popped out and stabbed you in the back.
It's a Souls classic at this point, you know. You kind of have to be it's gonna happen at some point. There's gonna be there's gonna be a poison swamp. There's gonna be guys that jump out of the thing and push you off cliffs, or just like mob you with 3 dudes. You're like, oh, there's an item here, and you pick it up, and like 2 guys spawn behind you.
Ooh, right, piece of candy.
Yeah, exactly. It's totally like that, right? And now, having played it before, I come in and I'm like, that's bait.
Right.
Every time he's like, that's bait. And so, just to like run straight past it, it spawns all the guys. You turn around and you whoop them from your horse, and then you pick up the thing, right? It's like so I'm avoiding a bunch of this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I will interrupt you here and say that I saw that Furiosa.
Oh yeah, how was it?
Ooh.
Michael, you good? If I'm not going to spoil anything really. I
don't know what there is to spoil about the movie, to be honest, unless you're just going to straight up talk about the plot.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm not going to talk directly about the plot, but I am going to say like the nods and references that are in there are very good. Like,
yes.
The idea that the scene with her mother is happening in a place that she experiences in the next movie in the dark when Max runs off and annihilates a bunch of people in the night, adds a lot more depth to a scene where she didn't. Charlize Theron was acting her butt off, but you didn't know why.
Right. Yeah. There is a bunch of really cool stuff that if you've seen Fury Road, you go like, oh, and like nod your head multiple times, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really fun to see like little bits and pieces of the building of Fury Road happening, as well as the little subtle nods back. Like the biker gang is using a bunch of bikes from the first Mad Max movie.
Yeah, it's very cool to see that he is not just doing the like, this is the prequel to Fury Road, but like this is the interscene movie between that and the stuff from before, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The world is happening while Max is eating his sandwich on top of the ridge.
Right, yeah. Who knows how long he stands there, but
stands there long enough to be an ad for the game. Because isn't that the exact shot from the game or whatever? I don't know.
I don't know, but I do know the game takes place in this area of this world, right? You do go to these places, you drive around the wasteland doing stuff for Bullet Farm and Gas Town and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah. So interesting that this part of the world didn't really exist during the Mad Max era with you know who?
The previous incarnation, yeah.
Yeah. The pre-Tom Hardy era, you know. But the idea that these bikers are discovering the stuff we were just dropped into in the last movie, and now we get to have it explained to us like we're Chris Hemsworth.
Right.
Yeah.
Dr.
Very
Demento
funny.
or whatever his name is.
Dementus.
Dementus.
Yeah, Dementus was a good little character. You know, there's just
I like that.
the
George
idea
Miller,
that
yeah.
okay.
He's like, okay, he's going to basically look like himself, but like jacked, right?
Yeah.
But then we're going to put a fake nose and a mustache and beard.
whistly teeth.
Yeah, just to like make him. Now he's funny. You're just like, such a weird choice.
But it's true to his name. It is kind of demented the way that they like take. You know, he's got this thing for purity. His bikes are like crystal clean.
Yeah,
you know, and then they take Chris Hemsworth, who's, you know, ostensibly you're saying his body's kind of the same image, and then they're like, yeah, let's mess it up a little bit though in a weird way. He's wearing a white parachute, but as he descends further and further from himself at the beginning of the movie, the parachute begins to change colors over and over again.
And then also like in response to stuff, right? Like his parachute starts out white, but like later in the movie stuff happens and it's not white anymore because he's been rolling around in the sand or whatever, right? And like,
it immediately turns to red, right? And
right.
Yeah. Dementus the Red.
Yeah. What did you feel about
I felt
Anya Taylor-Joy's performance?
I think she did a great job. I think that you can't match a Charlize Theron character but she created a new version of it. I wish she had kind of been quieter longer, right? Then she had to start talking at certain points.
Like they gave her too many lines and she should have had
they almost gave her
less, right?
Yeah. It's hard for her to have the same smoke, you know, that Charlize Theron can throw.
Right.
But I think she did a good job playing a younger version of that character. I almost wished they had given it like more time. Like she's way younger, but it almost
I didn't like
right
the
up
scene
to
at
the
the
movie.
end. I know what you're talking about at the end, right?
Yeah.
I wish they hadn't have done that part. That specific scene, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
kind of like
I totally.
I don't feel like
you.
she quite got there, but she was doing a great job. I mean, she did fine.
Yeah. I was totally with you. It's like I bought her as the character as like a younger version, and I was like, oh, it's great. And then like, you know,
naive,
and now she's
multiple times.
She's gotten her road legs under her or whatever, and then 5 years later this happens, right? But you know,
relatably naive too. With like George Miller did a great job of not just making her character make mistakes, but make believable mistakes over time, where it's like, no, I'm just going to leave you to die, and then slowly get to know you, and then try to save you, and you know what I mean? Like, like the idea that a character can make a decision over time, change their mind, and then be punished for it, right? Right, is a very, very real thing. A lot of the filmmaking part of it that was very good, and I think it didn't get talked about enough because it's a prequel, is the idea that you said earlier, right? There's no weight in a certain way because you know what's going to happen with the character. You know what happens in the next movie. The next one is the one where all the action is. Not that there's no action in this movie.
Right. But plenty of action scenes, but yeah, it's not the same kind of movie.
But the ideas behind, okay, well, Michael, you're going to see her lose her arm. I assume you assumed that.
Sure, yeah.
So
if they're going to do backstory, that's kind of, yeah.
If you had a preference, would you rather that be a big deal or just part of the story?
I feel like I want it to be just part of the story.
Well, it sure just sort of happens.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
think that
like
it's
you,
one of those
you
things
see
where
the
like
scene where it's like, oh shoot, is that related to like her arm in the future or whatever? And then the story just keeps moving, and you're like, okay, okay. It's not a big deal, but it's happening. You know.
I mean, she never treated it as a big deal in the first movie, or I say the first movie, but in Fury Road, right? It was never treated as a big deal that she only had the one arm, right?
But very much in the Mad Max style. There's no, her arm is a character instead of her being a character. Her psyche is the character instead of her being the character. Right? When we have multiple people that we're worried about, we know all the other people and what they are. We care about Dementus, and we care about the parts that make up Furiosa later on. And so those are the things that get time. And that was cool for them to break it apart that much, and for the mental part of it to be the final part, right? The movie's actually broken into 5 parts, Michael, with literal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 titles, which I did not know.
It was straight up like numbered scenes, effectively.
And it's almost like the idea of the 5 humors being created within her, right? Or 4 humors, I guess, but there's 5 parts. I don't know.
Trying to bring medieval like physiology.
No, I'm just saying it's like it's the idea of like this person is being pieced together over time.
Yeah,
in the movie. So
it's a good analogy.
It's a good analogy. I was really impressed that it was like a movie that not everyone's going to talk about, but was a very, very well made film considering.
And I think it does an important thing for a prequel movie, that it doesn't diminish the movie that comes after it.
No, not at all.
In that
it didn't try to one up it at all.
Yeah, it teaches you a bunch of stuff about the movie that comes after, like what these places are, because that stuff is absolutely not at all explained in any way in Fury Road, right? And you learn some stuff, but all the stuff you learn doesn't really affect your enjoyment of Fury Road. And so I think that that's in itself is a great feat. And the fact that the movie is good on top of that is great.
Yeah, I think that's a key thing that a lot of prequels kind of miss out, is the opportunity to do some really solid world building while still telling a story.
But not too much of it, thankfully, right? Because there's events and reasons for us to tell you what the Bullet Farm is in this movie.
Right. It's not just like they're like, Bullet Farm, here's the history, right? Because even
they do throw a title on the screen though, and I thought that was very funny. I was like, this is a little bit video gamey, George.
Yeah, it's a tough. There's a big time span the movie takes place over, right? Like, what do you do at some points, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Michael gets to choose game or shows. Next, Michael.
Let's do game.
All right. JJ, I got 3 left.
Hit me.
The first one is no jokers allowed. The next one is no money from big blind, no money from little blind, 3 joker slots.
And money from bosses? Wow.
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember the last one off the top of my head without booting it up. But the 18, 19, and 20 are the last 3 challenges left, and they are brutal.
Yeah, I haven't unlocked those.
Yeah. I have had a good time with Balatro. I am now over 100 hours. The challenges were a very good suggestion.
I told you, man, they're fun.
They some of them you're like, I don't know how I would ever beat this, and then you happen upon a solution very quickly, and you're like, well, that wasn't nearly as hard as I thought. Like the glass deck. There's a whole deck, Michael, made out of glass cards.
Okay.
And a glass card has a 1 in 4 chance of breaking when you use it, except that in the challenge, they put in this card that makes them break.
That you can just randomly draw.
No. It's tagged into your joker slot. You can't get rid of it.
Oh, okay.
So every card you play breaks and goes away. You can run through 52 cards pretty dang quickly if you're not careful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So those where you're like, I don't know how I'll ever beat this. I give up. And then the next time you come back to it, you're like, well, what if I just did this? And then it works immediately.
Yeah, it's one of the, there's actually, I mean, there's a through line between that kind of logic and thinking and Elden Ring even, because that's how Elden Ring bosses work. When you're trying to figure out how to win, like, oh, I've been getting killed over and over. Whatever, I'm putting this down. I don't know what to do. And then you come back the next day, you're like, what if? And then, right, you figured it, like your mind subconsciously figured it out. And I bet it works the same way with these challenges in Balatro, right? It's like puzzle solving. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, puzzle solving in a little bit more of a randomized way, much like you were talking about with Elden Ring. Elden Ring, the character follows a prescription, but it's reactive, right? It doesn't always do exactly the same thing. The arena that you're fighting in, you run into things or whatever. Totally. Balatro, still, you have to draw cards, and either you're going to draw the card that reacts to your glass cards breaking, or you're not.
Or like, the strategy you're coming up with is you're going to get cards that support it or you won't, right? And then, do you get the feeling the challenge runs are a little bit weighted, though?
They're 100% have to be, yeah.
Because I feel that at least the couple of the ones that I did that I was able to beat, it was like, man, what are the odds of this actually showing up? It's like, this is the perfect thing, and I do kind of need this.
Yeah.
And like, but maybe they just have like a whole bunch of jokers that they ban out every time too, that like they know are going to be useless or whatever.
Sometimes though, I get cards and I think, this is how I'm going to beat this, and I lose that run. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. That's like the perfect card for beating, the one where there's one where every time you discard, you lose $1.
Right.
And there's another one where every time you buy something, the price goes up $1. And it's like, well, clearly economy is like the way to get through this. And it's actually like, no, well, tarot cards might be better actually. Or planet cards,
Yes, stuff that's low cost and you can still scale.
There's one that locks all your jokers on anti-4. So good luck. You better get all your good jokers before then,
Yeah, I guess I don't like that card that scales with tarot cards, but I can get it early. Those tarot cards are cheap.
Oh, I'm getting pants and square joker. I guess we're playing two pair the entire time.
It's like I don't like square joker, but I guess this is where we live now, right?
Yeah. Don't make a mistake. Yeah. It is, and I think continues to be the perfect game for the Steam Deck. But Michael, maybe the Steam Deck is about to become, or if you have another one of those options, like what is it, the Asus ROG Ally? What is it? The ROG Ally? Yeah,
I think that's right.
They're gonna have another. When these things came out, they were really popular. They're still really popular, but I think they're about to have the vanguard of the new PC era. I think we both had a little bit of a realization that we've entered the death of exclusive content, but only if you own a PC.
I think so. I think that the majority of exclusivity that occurs anymore tends to be timed exclusives, whether or not it's announced that way. Everything seems to be trending in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, even the stuff that's hitting now is like, okay, well, Ghost of Tsushima's coming, and also, it's going to work on my Steam Deck. That game came out a couple of years ago on the PlayStation, but it's going to come.
It's out on the PC already.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, but you get what I'm saying, right? A little bit,
yeah.
It's
I mean, God of War Ragnarok is coming, right?
Yeah.
The what I'm sure one of these days, The Last of Us will come out. I can't think of any of the big Nintendo exclusives. Those seem to be at least some of the holdouts.
Well, I think that was one of the games that prompted me to make the comment that I did about us being in a moment of the death of exclusivity. Was that new Switch Prince of Persia game got announced for PC?
Yeah, a Switch exclusive, right? Quote unquote.
Yeah.
Which one?
I don't remember the name of it, but there was a new Prince of Persia.
Yeah. I'll come up with it in a second.
But
the Metroidvania one?
Maybe?
The Lost Crown.
Okay. I think the confusion there is that game was out on the Epic Store already. So you didn't know because no one goes on the Epic Store.
Sure,
so
yeah.
You would never have known that it was already on PC.
But that's,
was it a Unity game? It's a Ubisoft game, though.
It's a Ubisoft game. It was on the Epic Store. They had an exclusivity deal for some amount of time.
Yeah, so it amounts to the same thing, though, right?
Yes, totally.
Whether it's Switch or the Epic Store.
And now it is coming out of the Switch and Epic Store jail to Steam and other platforms.
Yeah. So we've reached a point where if you just wait long enough, and in some cases it's really not all that long.
Well, they have to extend the lives of these things. Like, they have to keep game sales going for longer and bigger periods of time. So the idea that Microsoft has sort of instigated by buying up, almost everything under the planet and putting it onto, Game Pass is, look, I'm going to create a storefront where, a small fee of subscription or whatever else gets you access to my thing early, right? And PlayStation's doing it with PlayStation Plus. Switch, who knows what they're going to do in the next year when they release Switch 2, but they've started the idea of creating a platform. They've got all their classic games in Switch Online, right? Not all, but they're creating a library of Switch Online. And, okay, I want to go on and play Nintendo 64. Well, here's most of it.
I mean, most of the good ones, right? They don't have all of them, but they have a lot of the ones you want.
But if you want to play GoldenEye, it's sitting there waiting for you.
Right.
And it'll work without any, need to do what I was doing with my Steam Deck 2 years ago. So the idea that these places have a first stop shop for certain things and then a longer tail life by saying, okay, well, Microsoft is going to put stuff on Steam. PlayStation is going to put stuff on Steam. And a game that came out 2 years ago, all of a sudden is going to get another life, an influx of cash for them on a bunch of people that they've laid off.
Yeah,
I think it almost seems necessary.
Yeah, I think necessary is totally the right word, Andy. It's, with the costs and the ballooning cost of making games, especially high fidelity, the AAA games out there, like Ghost of Tsushima we talked about, God of War, Last of Us, these kinds of like really huge budget, big expensive games, like just even if you sold one to every person that owns a PlayStation, right? That's you're not going to recoup your costs. Or maybe you do, but it's only a little bit, right? And that's not enough anymore, right? You have to or you're realistic and not every person is going to buy this. So you have to expand, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They're finally, the manufacturers of these games are finally starting to realize that you just need to put your game in front of the widest audience possible.
It's kind of amazing. And it feels on the one hand really good. I mean, Michael, you must have roughly the same feeling as me, where it's like, I'm sitting here with a great PC. I pay for Game Pass. I've got a Switch and I've got a Steam Deck. I've got all the bases covered for what's coming down the pipe, right? And it feels like PlayStation is going to get faster with releasing these things. And what was the things that came last week? All the
Kingdom Hearts.
Kingdom Hearts. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. That was it. Kingdom Hearts last week.
All of those games were out on the Epic Store also, and have been. For
they were
2
exclusive.
years.
Yes, yeah, they were.
I'm just saying, but it's another like, what is the Epic Store doing? Like they've had these. Like there should have been like a huge thing. Like, hey, Kingdom Hearts is on PC right now. Like, hello.
Yeah.
And then But now people are like, oh my God, Kingdom Hearts is on PC, right?
But Kingdom Hearts is on PC with direct access to my Steam Deck, right? And this is part of what I think makes the new, what I'm calling the new PC era so exciting, is the availability of this stuff to me in the way that I want to play it.
Yeah. And I think that really just shows the power of Steam as a service. Like, the reason why everyone uses Steam as a PC storefront is not that, like, you know, Epic couldn't do these things or the Windows Store couldn't do these things, but they didn't create a system that allows the games to run on this Steam Deck, you know, or the ROG Ally or whatever. They didn't create all these, you know, cloud saves and controller supports and all this stuff, right? And maybe they will get there someday. And look, we would all, as consumers, love it if the competition was better, right?
Sure, yeah, it benefits us.
But they're not there now. And so, yeah, as a consumer, why would you use one of these other platforms when all the features are over here, you know?
Yeah, what's that? I'm in the middle of playing a game, but I'm going on a trip. What you got for me, Epic? What can I take it with me to play on? Oh, nothing? Okay, I'm going to play it on Steam.
You can install Epic on a ROG Ally, right?
Sure.
And a Steam Deck.
Natively. You could also install it on a Steam Deck with a little bit more trouble. But like, if someone came to me and was like, "What should I buy?" I would say buy a ROG Ally. Don't put an SD card in it, and then install Steam. Install. You know, I love the Steam Deck. I'm happy with mine. I would suggest it as a usable device, and I have in the past, and people love using it. And 90% of what I own on the PC is on there. But the usability of having Windows as an option, you know, and all the benefits that Steam has created of controller support and all these other things still somewhat work, but their package is a little bit tighter. I don't want this to turn into a one versus the other in this.
And it's not meant to be.
Thing. It's not really meant to be.
All that stuff builds together, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Right.
And that controller support is the reason the integrated controller on the Steam Deck works, right? Because it's a controller. It recognizes it as a controller, and then it's supported, you know, natively through Steam without having to do work. Hey, Michael, if you want to use your Switch controller on your PC, you can do that. Steam has support. You can use a PS5 controller, a PS4 controller, the Xbox 360 controller, whatever. As long as you can hook it up to the PC, Steam has integrated support for it.
Yeah.
And I think it may not be as good as, you know, Nintendo's stuff directly or whatever, but
I think that's kind of an maybe undersold, underhyped feature of Steam, is that they really have gone out of their way to turn themselves into a play the way you want to play service.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, they have like ways to support mouse and keyboard for games that don't support mouse and keyboard. You know, you can create a profile, you can load it up as a controller, you can use it to try and control the game, and it'll let you do it.
Yeah, which is so funny because the kind of full circleness of remembering the days where controller support wasn't offered and third-party programs came that you could tweak and hack to make your controller work with Steam. Now we've swung, the pendulum has swung the complete opposite direction. And
it shows you that a lot of companies that don't believe laying groundwork support, you know, and counting on community to fix it or counting on fixing it later. This current generation of dropping games, and it's like, well, we got to launch it. We'll fix it later. You know, I mean, they're in Call of Duty Warzone 17 and they're still launching stuff and being like, well, we'll fix it later. It never gets fixed or added. Steam said there's money to be made here in putting this stuff in here. And it has, I think, revitalized the PC over time as an option with all this hardware and software support they've created. Sony doesn't have to look at it and be like, well, it's not going to be playable the way we want, so we can't put it on there. Now it's like, well, this is a viable option for more revenue.
Yeah, I think it's that you made a really important point there, Andy. It's not just that they do this work and immediately the dollars come rolling in, right? It's a long-term play. You're adding this support to make the service better over time so that other avenues come in, right? It's not just like, adding support for the PS5 controller has given us $50,000 now or whatever, right? That's not even, I'm sure that doesn't even pay one person's like salary. But like, you know, it's not an immediate win for Steam to do that work. But the goodwill it generates, the ability for those games to then work natively on Steam without those people having to do extra work, right, is what makes the platform attractive in the future.
Yeah. It's weird to be saying all this stuff so positively and to be so excited about it to me. And I'm very excited about it. Seeing stuff like Kingdom Hearts just cropping up as just install it and play it. I know a lot of people aren't going to like that style of game, but that style of game also was locked to a PlayStation for so long, since the PlayStation 2, you know, that has been locked to a PlayStation or an emulator. And it makes me, as a older game liker,
you can say
very excited. And then you just sit back and you see the same day the news out of the people that made Disco Elysium, or you see the news that Microsoft's planning another round of layoffs, or that Ubisoft is thinking about shutting down a studio, and you're like, what? How are these two things happening at the same exact time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really feel bad for the people who have to like report on this industry, because like, how do you go to these, like, you know, these big summer game festivals showing all these new games, talking about all the cool stuff that's coming out, and square it with the fact that like a bunch of these people are still probably going to lose their jobs. A bunch of the people that made this stuff have probably already been laid off, right? Like, how do you even like tell that story of like, wow, this game looks cool? All the people that made it have already been fired. Like,
Yeah,
and it hasn't even hit the revenue stream yet of going to the Epic exclusive or PlayStation exclusive or Microsoft exclusive for 6 months, and then getting to Steam, and then all this stuff. Like, they've already decided that it's going to be, oh, well, we need to cut the costs of whatever to be able to make money back. And it's tough to be excited about something changing, the industry changing, when what I thought months ago, what I was told by industry people months ago when I was talking to them about it, was like, well, this is kind of normal. You know, the industry goes through these like contractions, people realign, they'll all get rehired. And it's like, I don't know, man, this really seems like a lot bigger situation than people are making it out to be.
I think you're right. And I think that it will bounce back to some degree, but it's going to take a while. And by bouncing back, it may be many years. And these people that bounced out, they're not going to be the ones that are coming back. It will be other people, right?
Yeah, younger people, cheaper people.
Probably. Yeah. And so that's just, a lost generation, or a lost, strata of workers, basically.
Yeah. Not to end it on a dour note, but that's just in the back of my mind as we enjoy, the new and the exciting in the middle of all of that. But, all right.
Well, speaking of stuff, though, where there has also been the cup runnething over.
Uh-oh. So get a napkin. Get a towel under there.
I know, man. Who's going to stop all these TV shows? We have so many.
I literally can't keep up. My list I've been doing a lot, you guys.
We literally have a paper list over here, and it's like it just goes more. We just keep adding.
Yeah. I'm doing my best to redeem myself from previous situation of Beverly Hills Cop 1, 2, and 3. So I watched Bill and Ted 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, great choice.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Followed by a lot of other stuff.
3 is the new one. That was the one that came out like during COVID?
Yeah. Face the Music.
Okay. That movie was all right.
Yeah, it was all right. First and the second one, the first, obviously.
The first one, all-time classic, right? Yeah.
Can't beat it. Yeah. But I don't think that those are the 3, maybe 4 that I want to talk about today. JJ, you have been watching Twin Peaks.
Yeah, I have.
Again. And some of your new realizations you've been texting about, I think, tie into a lot of things that I have been watching aside from rewatching Twin Peaks, weirdly.
Oh, okay.
So give me those takeaways on your new watch through, because I have some other shows that might deal with those takeaways quite differently. Obviously, no one deals with anything the same way as David Lynch. So.
Yeah, I was going to say I was like, what, did you watch like Mulholland Drive or something? Like, I don't know what you're...
No, there's no nuclear apocalypse in Mulholland Drive that I could figure out.
Yeah, man, it is. Yeah, I mean, speaking of the nuclear apocalypse, I've been keeping up with Twin Peaks season 3. I'm doing about 2 episodes a week in line with the Nextlander Watchcast as they've been going through it. And the most standout episode from that entire series that I remember, from my first watch through, was episode 8, where it's there's a little bit of stuff at the front, and then it's basically this like art film for the back half. That is, and these are hour-long episodes. That is, this weird, like 50s story with a boy and a girl, and then a like weird guy coming in from the desert, like asking for a light and like terrorizing these people, like destroying a radio station and singing a song, and a nuclear bomb going off in the desert, and like for 40 minutes feels like.
And all the weird ash people that then show up later in the show.
Right. The woodsmen, they're called. Yeah. It's really knowing where the whole thing goes and sort of seeing this, here in the middle of it again, you realize it's like, this is an origin story for all the weird stuff that's going on later in the rest of Twin Peaks, right? Because it takes place in the 50s, and Twin Peaks is a 80s, I guess, show. Was it early 90s, maybe? I don't remember when the original run was.
Very early 90s.
Very early 90s. And the movie was a couple years after that. And then the return was in like 2017, 2018, something like that?
Yeah.
And it really, it's a, if you look at the whole show, and this, especially this 3rd season, as like David Lynch's commentary on both prestige TV, a like need to tell how this happened and how this world got this way, and a commentary on Twin Peaks itself, right? And I think that's kind of what is happening in this 3rd season. And it's easier to see this stuff when when you have the whole work available to you, and then you rewatch things and you're like, oh, I remember, and I've learned, and I see, right? So it's been interesting, man. Some of these scenes hit way harder. There's some really brutal stuff that happens in that show, and it is harder, just as hard or harder to watch the second time, for some parts of it.
Yeah. You trying to make me rewatch it. I don't have the time.
It's okay, man. It's on Paramount, whatever. Yeah. Streamalidoodle. It's there for you if you want it.
A gentleman in your show that you've been talking about also wanted to explore how the world got this way in a new avenue. Kyle MacLachlan.
I'm nodding. Yes. Yes.
Was recently in that new Fallout show.
I knew that. Yes.
Yeah. Also exploring what could how the world got this way. Their theory is much more presented in the, I'd say, like a light version of Lost, in the like, what's in the vaults? What's in this? Let's surprise you with that a little bit. And what's the mystery? How does this person know that person? But they have a very clear thesis, and they develop it very early on, as you go through the world of Fallout, some of which my spouse found to be quite funny, in terms of like, ghouls, people with no noses, and how
living zombies, basically
living zombies. Yeah. All that sort of stuff. And giant suits of mechanical armor, and knights, and
with the little guy running behind him with the golf bag of weapons.
Yeah. They really did not shy away from the Falloutness of Fallout. They did not try to. I mean, they really lean into the Vault Tech aesthetic and charm, and it is a very, very charming show in a horrible way, where you kind of grimace smile at a lot of things.
You feel like they kind of had to, right? Like if they hadn't really leaned into the Falloutness, they would have lost too much of their base.
I think that the social commentary of a show needs a backdrop. And if you want to take Fallout and water it down for a general audience, you're also not going to be able to do anything beyond make a watery show.
I mean, not that like Fallout is the most like uncut, pure politics getting injected straight into your veins. I mean, it's like, you know.
JJ, maybe just throw out there that the idea of the show is probably better than all the games already.
I would believe you. I don't think that's a hard concept to accept. If you know, from what I've heard of people saying how much they love this show, I would be surprised if that wasn't the case.
Right.
I think that it's a, you know, maybe it speaks, like you were saying, Andy, to a, you know, you can't make a show like this and have it turn out good if you don't approach it from a place of like, you know, accepting and wanting to further and do the thing the property is already doing. If you try to fight the property, if you try to like, you know, turn it to your thing, then it's going to turn out bad, right?
Right. There's a very deep-rooted thesis, I think, in the show, which is how deep can you bury your head in the sand, and what happens if you do?
Ooh,
and what happens if you don't?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Deep questions.
Yeah, I mean, they're not small. There's a lot of ridiculousness, like heads in jars talking to people, and you know. But in the same sentences that's happening, it's like, yeah, sure. What if society was run by scientists with no checks and balance?
Gestures broadly.
You know? What if the idea of eugenics was taken further? All these things Fallout has explored on their own in haphazard, disconnected ways, I think, because of the way that the games have worked on trying to keep them accessible to new players. Well, if you play New Vegas, you shouldn't have had to play this, that, and the other thing. A show doesn't have to do that.
Yeah, or like, you know, they've had a quest line about this topic, right? And the quest line is very good, but it's only the one quest line, and the rest of the
1
game
hour.
is 40 more hours, right?
Right, it's 1 hour. And can Kyle MacLachlan play one person that really is gonna epitomize, you know, is he an anti-hero? Is he a villain? Is he a hero? Is he that big of a character? Is he not a big, you know, like,
I mean, wow, Andy, you're really drawing a parallel to Twin Peaks. You know, he plays all three of those parts in Twin Peaks at the same time.
I thought I would mention it again at the end. There's a lot of other characters in that show, and a lot of them get a lot more screen time. And yet, the one you tend to be waiting on in Fallout happens to be Kyle MacLachlan again. Where is he? What's he doing? They spend episodes looking for him. Very, very weird.
Is that a meta commentary on Twin Peaks again? Season 3, it might be.
When you get to the end, it kind of looks like it. You know, the posters and the aesthetic, and you look at it and you're like, man, is Borderlands going to look like this too? And then you kind of sit with the story towards the end of that season, and it's like, I don't see how Borderlands could get anywhere near this with the storytelling and the ideas that we've started to throw out here at the end. They really wait to the end to really like just, okay, look, here's our theory. take it or leave it. Stick with us next season to see more. But Ella Purnell,
I love they had a thing and they went for it though. Like that's great. That's what all shows should be doing. Even if you want to base it on, other properties, you should have a thing and you should try and tell that story through the property, right? Don't fight the property, use it to tell your story, right?
You're going to see most of it through Ella Purnell, Aaron Moten, and Walton Goggins. And
Walton Goggins is just good in everything he's in, man. God,
you really start to feel like we're not going to get that much Walton Goggins. It's going to be kind of like a side character, and then you kind of, as Ella Purnell and Aaron Moten move through the show, you need to get more Walton Goggins for things to get explained, and it really starts to pick up at that point, I think. But the younger actors in this really kind of are the thread that binds it, and they do a great job. I mean, they have to change heavily from the beginning to the end, and you can see them doing it, and it's very good. Very good. Fallout. Not That's Twin Peaks, but somehow still kind of Twin Peaksy.
Well,
I guess. Season 3
actually relevant to the current zeitgeist, unlike Twin Peaks, maybe?
Could be. I mean, if you wanted to tie it to modern events, you probably could. I think it's a larger, not larger. I don't think they're going grandiose theories. I think what they're doing is a little bit more timeless. It's not like you should pay attention to elections, right?
Yeah,
like,
sure.
Yeah.
Sure, there's a little bit of you should pay attention to the world around you, but it's more like, I think I said earlier, are you responsible for knowing what's going on? And if you feel responsible for knowing what's going on, you're going to pay the consequences of knowing things you maybe wish you didn't want to know. That's real life stuff in a very weird setting with heads in jars and giant things they call abominations that are radioactive bears. Weirdly, I don't know if either of you saw the other thing with the giant radioactive animal in it that just came back around.
I'm gonna have to clue us in.
Yeah, I think we need some help here.
Godzilla -1 on Netflix. Anybody? Since we're talking about nuclear apocalypses.
So I have not seen this, but I have heard that it is very good.
Michael, you usually do Oscar previews. Was this part of your list?
This was not on my list, other than the same as JJ. I had heard that it was very good and worth seeing, so it was on my list for that reason more than for being awards worthy in any sort of way.
There's a statement going around that if you could do this kind of digital work for 15 million, like, people are wasting money on all these other movies and shows. And I think it's a little bit reductive to say that there's definitely moments you can see that are not as polished as maybe other studios can get to. And also the salaries and work hours of a Japanese company are significantly different than union work in the United States. But it is mind-blowing to physically look at and figure out how they did. I did go through it quickly to see that basically, except for a few of the larger scenes where they use digital landscaping, the sets are extremely small. Like, there's a house, but the house set is one house, right? There's no larger streets around it that people are walking up and down. So they were very selective in how they made this film for so little money. But that's not really, I think, the impressive thing. I think the impressive thing was for a Japanese creator to really put out there that Godzilla, yes, both of you know, I think, the history of what Godzilla exemplifies, right? What it's supposed to be a stand-in for.
Is this teacher asking the question to the class here?
Yeah,
or?
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's
I don't want to talk the whole time.
It's the nuclear bomb in Japan, right? It's the threat of nuclear war and devastation, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's They really the theory of this is redefining that a little bit more into the devastation of Japanese culture, but not necessarily by Godzilla. Finished by Godzilla and ruined by the travesties of war, I guess, is the best way to put it. Japan is destroyed by what they, in their own words later on, will call their own hubris and lack of respect for life in the movie. And yeah, Godzilla shows up and really puts them back on their heels while they're trying to recover from a loss of war. But it's almost like they invited it on themselves, is what the theory of this is. And it was a very touching little movie, in so much as you can have a giant monster running around blowing things up.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I've heard the Godzilla movies always have had a very strong anti-war bent. So this is definitely in the tradition, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think the weird realism of post-war Japan in this seemed much more poignant to, I think, the idea of Twin Peaks and Fallout, of like, look at the travesty wrought by nuclear war, right? Fallout might be leaning a little bit more into the societal aspect of it. And maybe you saw that in Twin Peaks, but Godzilla's theory starts with, wow, look at these mistakes. And now we have to live with our mistakes while trying to fend off this giant monster. So we have these ships, but none of our ships have weapons. Well, why is that?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So, we need to defend ourselves. Oh, well, America said they'll defend us. Well, they can't help defend us because they'd be moving ships too close to the Russians. So we have to do it ourselves with this fleet of naval, volunteers. And it really sends a different message than I think the normal apocalyptic view of Godzilla, especially in the West, of just like this, oh yeah, he represents nuclear bomb, now watch him destroy things. This was much more he represents our mistakes.
Well, that review alone already has me interested.
And sure enough, the graphics hold up pretty dang well, I gotta say.
I do have a question for you, Andy. Did you watch it in color or in black and white?
I watched it in color.
Okay. So there is apparently a black and white version of this, interestingly called Godzilla -1 color.
Oh. There's some interesting... I watched it in Japanese with subs, and I know some Japanese words, a few of them.
I think it's probably the right way to do it for a movie.
I would still say to do it that way. There was a thing that happened that bothered me, because there's a very subtle message in the film between some characters. One of the characters meets another character, and she calls him Otosan. She's calling him like bro, or like brother, or like, like pal, right? And they get into this relationship with each other where they're just trying to survive post-war Japan. And she sees him, she's like, "What's up, bro? What's up, brother?" As far as I understood it, But the sub never addressed that. And so later on in the film, when they become much, much closer and their relationship is different and she's no longer saying bro or brother to him, it seemed to me to be a large shift in the character dynamic that was just not explored because of subtitles. So that was a little bit weird and something I guess you would lose maybe. But I don't think that hurts the movie at all. I think it's still the message of the film comes across no matter what you're listening to it in. I just couldn't stand the dub. I can't do it.
Yeah, I think I have fallen off of dubbed stuff in general, unless they like resync the lips or something, because it's just too distracting. Yeah. I definitely was one of those people who was like, no, always watch. Like I wanted the dubbed anime if they had it, right? But then now,
it was anime.
Yeah, but like now I don't do that either, and now I'm watching that subtitle also. So.
Yeah. Can I throw a final suggestion at you for 2 seconds?
Okay,
do it.
If you're on Netflix, have you noticed that Max is just dropping stuff? Speaking of the new PC era, have you noticed that HBO Max is just dropping stuff on Netflix now?
Or is this just Netflix buying stuff that Warner Brothers is throwing in the trash?
No, I mean they have like Band of Brothers on there.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Yeah, so I think a lot of their older catalog, they're just starting to filter over to other places as long as it's a non-exclusive deal. They're like, hey, you want to stream this also? Go ahead. Pay us a little bit, Maybe it's an experiment. I don't know. But I noticed that something that popped up there that I would not have told people to sub to HBO Max for, but if you have Netflix already, Scavenger's Reign. Have you heard about this?
No.
Animated.
Okay.
It's weird. But it's not weird in like a Rick and Morty weird kind of way. It's off-putting and paced strangely sci-fi animated. And I absolutely loved it when I watched it on HBO. And now if people have the time, it's one of those stories where it's like what happens when people are isolated. How do they behave? What happens when the world around them, doesn't want them to survive? How do they do it? Kind of things.
Okay.
Really, really good. Really good. Very, very somber film. Almost a film. It's a show, but there you go.
Speaking of stuff on Netflix that was good, did we talk about Blue Eye Samurai on this?
We sure did. Maybe.
Okay.
Probably.
People should watch that. That's on Netflix. Go watch that.
Yeah, we talked about that because we talked about how there was no Japanese available.
Okay, that's right.
It was made in America.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. We talked about a lot of TV there at the end. So if people have games they want to hear about next week, because we should do a refocus,
they can send that to podcast@weweregamers.com. Or let us know if we missed something that we should be watching in our quick blitz TV recap.
Let me tell you,
and all that extra time we have.
I'm not missing much of anything. I'm trying my best to keep up.
Yeah, I mean, I know stuff that I desperately want to talk with you guys about, but I can't in good faith spoil it. So
tell us what we need to watch next, because I'm almost there. A Shogun is what you want to talk about, probably.
Absolutely Shogun, but also X-Men 97.
Okay, I can put X-Men 97 close to the top because I could watch that by myself.
But yes, also Shogun.
I felt like I just talked the last 30 minutes of that. That's why I wanted to ask questions or something.
Yeah, it's the nature of what happens when we have these kind of like The three of us kind of did disparate stuff.
Yeah. But hey, you got a lot to say. It's never bad.
I would order it this way. Godzilla -1, Scavenger's Reign, Fallout, maybe, because Scavenger's Reign is short.
Okay. I as when I finish Twin Peaks, I'll need another thing to watch by myself here. I could give that a go.
Put that at the top. It'll give you a weird vibe because you just have gotten off of Twin Peaks.
Everything is weird coming off Twin Peaks. So what are you gonna do?
Well, there's this desaturated palette. There's this alien that won't talk. It's a strange show, man.
I mean, maybe I'll just be primed for it because I'm so used to the strange stuff. I'll just be like, oh, this just fits right in.